When words fall short, when hope feels thin, listen close, let music begin.
All right. Hi, everybody. Today I have the privilege to introduce you to Poornima, and she's going to tell us about the inside job. Hi, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for having me, Cynthia.
Well, tell us what you speak on.
Yes, of course. Well, I speak on leadership as an inside job, really just trying to help people strengthen their self-trust and clarity so that they can become resilient, authentic leaders.
Now, you hit some pretty good words there. Trust,
Yep.
trust.
Trust,
Oh my
self-trust.
gosh, what an issue.
Yeah,
It's so important with bosses and employees is to have that
right.
trust. And
Yeah.
resilience, I love that word too,
Yeah. Yes.
because
Yes.
that's very important. Do you have a story that goes with this?
I do. And maybe I'll tell you a little bit about kind of how I got here is,
Sure.
you know, I think like a lot of high performing or high achieving women and men, I sort of built my career on being capable, dependable, and prepared because I always thought that confidence meant being sure, being certain about things, just being ready for anything, always having the answers. And, I realized in all aspects of my life, I had this mentality. So as a mom, as a corporate leader, as an entrepreneur, and, from the outside, it looked pretty successful. But internally, I felt like I was navigating a lot of big decisions, a lot of pressure, and moments where I didn't really feel certain about what I was doing. And I sometimes even felt like I wasn't really representing my own voice. And so, the turning point for me, I think, wasn't so much a job change, but it was more an internal shift. I realized that confidence doesn't come from certainty, it comes from self trust, from knowing your own values, and from making decisions from alignment, even if it feels uncomfortable. And that's kind of what led to my keynote, The Inside Job. Just, I really enjoy helping others like stop performing leadership, but really just owning it because you don't really have to become another person to lead. You just have to be who you are. So,
I love the word alignment.
mhm.
That's such an important word, and it takes a special skill to be aligned,
Mhm.
especially when you get ego involved. Be-
Yes.
because some people can think they're dealing with insecurity or dealing with someone who is pretending they're not insecure because I think what I've learned is the bigger the ego, the more the insecurity. And
Yes.
so
Yeah,
tell me about
that can be
that.
true.
Yes.
Yeah, that can certainly be true. And I think in terms of alignment is a lot of that internal reflection, right? Understanding kind of who you are, what kind of leader you are, and what your own values are, and trusting those. We all have instincts, and sometimes we ignore them or we push them aside. But a lot of times our instincts, they're signals. They're something that we need to listen to and use them as a guide and then act responsibly based on kind of how you're thinking about those instincts. And so alignment really comes from that kind of internal understanding of your own self being and really being able to trust yourself.
Your message is important. And
Hmm.
in today's world, how do you see your message coming to your audiences and that type of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really important because we are living in a time of like relentless external noise. There are more opinions, more metrics, more urgency, more comparison than ever before. And, you know, when the outside world gets really loud, it becomes really easy to quiet your own internal thoughts, your own internal voice, and just outsource your decisions or outsource your judgments to others. And so, you know, what I speak about in the Inside Job is kind of coming back to that internal clarity, knowing who you are, knowing what you value and how you make decisions. I think without that anchor, people tend to react instead of lead. And I think in this day and age, you know, I think it's essential to have that anchor. You know, I mentioned previously, you know, sometimes we think confidence comes from being sure, from being certain. But, you know, certainty is so rare these days, right? Markets change, technology evolves, roles change. So, you know, I think if people are waiting to feel fully certain or sure, they're gonna miss the boat. You
You know, I
know?
need to ask you a question because
Mhm.
obviously you have a lot of experience in corporate understanding.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you a question. Have you ever seen or experienced somebody coming up with a great idea
Mhm.
and somebody else taking credit for it?
Ah, yes, I have seen that. In fact, that actually has happened to me.
I don't know what made me ask you that question, but I think now I know.
Yes, and I think that happens many times. I think that happens a lot to women. Um, I've seen that happen where, you know, a woman in a meeting may make a certain point or make a suggestion, and then perhaps a male colleague will come in and repeat the same idea, and his idea is then recognized rather than
Yes.
saying, "Oh, thanks, you know, so and so for that idea. I agree."
Yes.
You know, and it's interesting how that happens, but I think that's where a lot of times women can counter that by stepping in and saying, "Thanks for supporting my idea," and really owning that, right?
Oh, I
Be
love that.
comfortable in your
Thank
own
you for
skin.
that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes they'll do it behind your back and
Yeah.
you can't really deal with it then,
Right.
but when you have an audience,
When you have an
because
audience.
I learned a long time ago, and it was when I was a waitress,
Mm,
that when two people are involved in that type of some kind of little thing, and that
yeah.
would happen a lot, you know, somebody would just be complaining, and even rude, really
Mm.
rude to me as a waitress, and nobody else would stick up for me.
Oh.
And I noticed that somebody would once in a while somebody say, "Hey, lighten up on her," you know, but not
Mm.
probably they were a waitress at the time or a waiter, but it's interesting because you have the dog in the fight, you know, you have the conflict, and
Mhm.
so many people were probably sitting at that same table saying,
Yeah.
"Wait, that was her idea."
Yeah.
But it shows strength and a lot of courage for
Mhm.
a woman to say, thank you for supporting my, that's brilliant.
Right? And it's
Yeah.
nice because it's still gracious. It's not, you know,
Yes.
I'm not being confrontational,
No,
but I'm
no.
acknowledging, but I'm
Yes,
also making the point that it was my point.
exactly. Exactly. Tell me somebody that you've helped with your inside job. Give me a testimony.
Yeah, so one moment that kind of stayed with me was I was mentoring. I was a mentor through a women's ERG, an employee resource group, and I was working with a woman who was a scientist, and she wanted to make a pivot into a different area of the business, into marketing. But she felt a little bit stuck because her background was so technical, and so she didn't feel like she had, you know, the thing to make that switch. So we spent quite a bit of time, again, you know, talking about self-trust, about really being clear about what she wanted next, and trusting her instincts instead of what's on her resume. Well, months later, she reached out to me to tell me that she had made the move into marketing. And I remember she told me that what stuck with her was the concept of trusting yourself and being clear about what's next. And that just meant so much to me, because it wasn't so much about strategy, but it was more around permission. And that, I don't know, I think that probably meant that the message was more than just more than just mentoring, but it was really something that could be built upon and something that I wanted to share more broadly.
I love that. I love that. Women helping women is good.
Yeah.
Because we live in a world almost where women competing with women is more promoted in beauty and, all that
Yeah.
stuff. And women find themselves competing, but when we work together,
Oh, wow.
great things happen.
Yes.
Great things happen. Do you have any advice for anyone trying something new, but maybe are holding back?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of times what I like to remind myself, and then also tell others, especially when they're trying something new and they might be nervous or a little bit scared, I just tell them, do it scared. Just say yes and then figure it out along the way. We are all very capable human beings and we have a lot of experience, and we should leverage that. So just do it scared, say yes, and figure it out.
I love that. So
I
tell me a
agree.
song that fires you up. I'm the music lady,
Ooh.
and I'm a composer, and I always like to ask this question.
That's a tough one because there's two that really resonate with me.
Well, tell us both of them.
All right. So
Okay.
the first one is Brave by Sarah Bareilles. It's about speaking up and speaking with clarity, even when you feel uncomfortable. And I think leadership requires that kind of courage, not so much volume, but clarity. But the one that really, really hits home for me is This Is Me by Keala Settle from The Greatest Showman. This
I just
song
got
isn't
chill
just
bumps.
about confidence. It's
Yeah.
about ownership. It's owning your story
Yes.
and kind of standing in your power without apology. And I love that. And that's exactly what my keynote is about. It's, you don't need to become a different person to lead. You really just need to stand fully in who you already are.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for this.
Of
And I
course.
see great things happening for you. I can see where people need to hear your message. So appreciate
Thank you.
this. Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Thank
Well,
you so much for having me.
and I know you haven't written a book, but we'll do an interview when you do. Okay.
Oh, okay. That sounds like a great next step.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Okay.